Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to our digital conference from wherever you are. I believe we have a worldwide audience today, and I'm grateful for that, along with our partners, the United Service Institution of India, USI, with whom we have just signed up to do collaborative work in conferences and related events. Our partner, the USI, is the preeminent think tank of India, celebrating its 150th anniversary this year. It is represented on our panel for this conference by its director, Major General B.K. Sharma, who specializes in strategic net assessments, scenario building, and gaming. He is a graduate of the Defense Services Staff College, Higher Command Course, and National Defense College. He commanded a mountain division on the China border, taught at the National Defense College, and was director at the military wing at the Joint Chiefs of Staff Committee. The other partner, ourselves, the Global Dialogue Forum, which I head, is an international think tank that grew out of our Foreign Affairs journal, Global Dialogue Review, and has just done a conference last November in London with the prestigious Chatham House. Our Global Dialogue Academy has a full complement of online programs and courses with prestigious institutions from around the world. We have a distinguished panel of speakers for today's conference. We welcome online the uh, we welcome online uh, we welcome online Major General Sharma, of course, who I've already introduced, General Gaurav Shamsher Rana, former Chief of Staff of the Nepalese Army and an astute commentator on strategic issues, Ambassador Ruchi Gansham, one of India's eminent diplomats, who had just returned to India from London at the end of her assignment as High Commissioner to the UK. She has also served as Secretary West in the External Affairs Ministry. Mr. Seshadri Chari, our other speaker, is a veteran leader of the national ruling Bharatiya Janata Party, as well as the Rashtriya Swayamsevak Sangh, the RSS, and he's a popular figure in the media, explaining various issues concerning India from a very comprehensive viewpoint. I'm grateful to our eminent panelists for the acceptance of our invitation and subsequent participation in this conference. The aim of this conference is to focus attention on a post-pandemic world, the reordering and realigning of it, as well as its globally governing institutions following the ravages of the coronavirus disease. The speakers have been chosen with great care and their reputations speak for themselves. We'd like to thank the following for their great help in organizing this event. Ms. Nisha Ramdas for overseeing the entire conference organizing, the assistance provided by Dr. Roshan Kanijo from the United Service Institution, our two Global Dialogue Forum rapporteurs, Dr. Dimple Teresa and Ms. Ria Sinha, and our Chief Technical Officer, Mr. Saurabh Mitra. The participants are requested to use the chat box for chat on screen to send in their questions. If they will just write their name and their designation, it will be most helpful, which will be replied directly on screen or through chat right at the end of all the discussions. I once again thank all of you and call on General Sharma to open proceedings with an overview of the strategic ordering of the world, what it was and what it is probably becoming. General Sharma, sir, please.
I thank Global Dialogue Academy and particularly Mr. Moses for this great initiative which we are going to build upon. Without much ado, I'll come to the subject proper. And as you all know, that COVID-19 is a black swan event since the times of Spanish flu in 1890, and it has induced a strategic shock in the world which is bound to alter geopolitical landscape in several ways. If you look at the economic picture on the whole, the economic prognosis looks very, very dim. As far as global security is concerned, the COVID has actually given rise to hypernationalism, particularly in a country like China. The strategic mistrust has deepened, and therefore Given the nature of conflict, the disputes, there is a likelihood of limited sectoral conflicts, what you see in South China Sea and along the line of actual control between India and China.
Rana, who former Prime Minister of Nepal, and so we hope to hear something really exceptional from you, General Rana. Over to you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Moses. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. I believe the role of intermediate or regional powers will be crucial in determining the balance of the overall process, as it will entail a vigorous contest over alliance and partnership building. I also see the intermediate powers playing a productive and supportive role in assisting smaller nations such as Nepal to escape the fate of a Melian dialogue, when the strong do what they will and the weak suffer what they must. Therefore, I feel the imperative of intermediate powers is to take one's neighbor into confidence, identify common objectives, build durable partnerships, and move towards their goal with a sense of a shared destiny. To envision India in the new multipolar world, I'd like to rewind a little to the Cold War and the non aligned movement. India's leadership was exemplary and useful. It did keep a lid on the unintended consequences of superpower rivalry. Therefore, a thorough reappraisal of India's current role based on well framed assumptions rooted in the past that take the present as a starting point and project forward will be useful. Besides, the rapidly changing geopolitical environment does warrant a major reboot of global strategic policy. In doing so, as Lawrence Freedman, a British strategic historian, put it, rather than think of strategy as a three-act play with a beginning, middle, and an end, it is better to think of it as a soap opera with a continuing cast of characters and plot lines that unfold over a series of episodes. There is no doubt that the rise of China as a dominant power in the region, with the capacity of challenging US preeminence, has upset the geopolitical cart. China's role and influence in the world has grown, along with its economy and its assertiveness. This is proving to be a dilemma in the contemporary, interlinked, and highly integrated rules based world of today. However, it's not only China's economy that has grown, so has India's. Three elements and instruments of national power makes a country great: economic, diplomatic, and military. India has it all. Besides, it has an additional force multiplier in the form of democracy. Having said that, India's place in the new multilateral world and its ability to create effective processes and structures to enhance regional strategic cooperation depends upon astute statecraft, able statesmanship, and skillful diplomacy, all packaged in the spirit of magnanimity. To conclude, diplomacy is always about give and take and to make sensible compromises. Therefore, given India's stature, it is important for it to assume the mantle of leadership and focus on the neighborhood issues. At the end of the day, the amount of time and attention given to one's neighbors is never wasted in purporting strategic cooperation.
Uh, Thank you, General Rana, for that very comprehensive view of what Nepal believes and thinks. You've given a good historical perspective, I noticed, and a little bit of humor about soap operas. So, but anyway, we'll see what this serial brings on. Thank you very much for your views. View from Nepal is very welcome,
Pleasure.
especially now. And you've given a very comprehensive historical point of view, and then coming down to contemporary times. You've also traced the links in a very precise way, regional, the international stage. So thank you very much, General Rana. And I'm sure there'll be some questions for you at the end of at the question and answer session. Our next speaker is very eminent diplomat from India. She has done all the areas we are talking about. She's going to speak on multilateral institutions, the need for reform, and indeed, it is already changing, especially after this pandemic. And they will need to be more responsive, more just perhaps, but I leave it to an expert. Um, Ambassador Ghanshyam has just returned, as I said, from UK, where she was High Commissioner. She has been Secretary West, where multilateral institutions did come under her. So she's familiar with all these areas. So without further ado, let me ask Ambassador Ghanshyam to speak, please.
Much. I want to also start by thanking Global Dialogue Review and Academy and Mr. Moses Manoharan, as well as all the other two speakers who spoke before me, General Sharma and General Rana, for their very interesting presentations. But given the global nature of the world and the globalized world that we live in, increasingly multilateralism has been important and remains important. I think General Rana mentioned it, that India has just been elected for another 2-year term. This is for the 8th time as a non-permanent member of the UN Security Council. India wishes to promote responsive and inclusive solutions to international peace and security. But if we see the bodies of the UN, the General Assembly is really the truly representative and universal body. The UN Security Council, which takes very important peace and security decisions, needs to expand in both the permanent and non-permanent categories, and also to improve its working methods. The system that was put in place in 1945 has not been able to evolve over the years, despite the fact that so many other countries, India being the prime example, have emerged on the world scene, and countries from Africa, Latin America are not even represented in the amongst the permanent members of the UN Security Council. So this is a major challenge that the UN needs to, the UN system and the multilateral system needs to address.
Mr. Seshadri Chari is a very familiar figure for most Indians because he's all the time appearing on TV channels. He's appearing often on TV channels, and um, he explains issues over a vast spectrum on things with international and domestic.
Hello.
And I shall ask Mr. Chari to come on.
So thank you in the first place, Mr. Moses, for all that excellent remarks that you have made. Obviously, I must thank Global Dialogue Review and Global Dialogue Academy for this opportunity. And as you have very rightly mentioned, these are my personal views. You have very rightly pointed out that we have to look at it from the regional point of view also. Just 6 months back, we were talking about the Asian century. 21st century will be the Asian century. Who will lead the Asian century is a different aspect. But we were talking of Asian century. I think 21st century will have to be a global century, not just Asian century or China-led world order. It has to be a global order led by a global leadership for a truly global century, not an American century or a Chinese century or an Asian century. So from that point of view, we will have to very clearly, India has a very important role to play in the region, and we will have to really look at the foreign policy perspective. Foreign policy, of course, Ambassador Ganesham is an expert on this issue, so I shouldn't be speaking about this. But foreign policy perspective of a country is the sum total of events and experiences of the past and geopolitical realities of today. So if you take the total experience of the past and we take into consideration the geopolitical realities of today, we should remember one thing, that what is important today is to ensure regional security, regional stability, and regional peace. Look for more suggestions from the speakers. Thank you.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay, great. Now we both will together take the questions. Can you please now please take the question from General P.K. Singh? He has a question and we will give him precedence because
we need to look at the Indo-Pacific a little more seriously. And the issue about China, I think we all need to look around. China has created a situation on the ground. Now, whether it is in the South China Sea, where it has made artificial islands and militarized it, and does not move out from there, or on the LAC with India. It wants to create a situation and then say, let's now negotiate. We don't negotiate on sovereignty issues.
Mr. Kosa, can I just introduce you as a very senior IAS officer, a senior IAS officer who has been, who is associated with the USI and was Chief Secretary of Assam and takes great interest in our external relations, especially with our neighbors.
With both US and China moving away from this concept, will there be a consensus on the new multilateral architecture? My question is to General Rana, and that is, what impediments do you see, General Rana, to better regional cooperation within SAARC?
The way I look at it, sir, is when you look at SAARC, the size and geography itself is very unique. You have India, inordinately larger than all the countries. The nearest big country, if you look at it, is Pakistan. Probably the GDP, the economy of India is 5 times the size. So the aspect of size is there. Then the geography, this is probably the only region when you have India, which borders all the other regions, but none of the other regions have a common border with each another. So that is geography itself. You can't change it at all. But I believe there are 2 basic flaws and 2 basic impediments, as you put it, in this relationship. Number one, which is a very obvious one, is the relationship, and the belligerency between India and Pakistan. That is, is for all to see, is a very obvious sort of obstacle to overcome. Then the second one is more in the charter itself. As I mentioned, there are no binding clauses in the charter, number one. And most importantly, number two, it is a regional cooperation when you are not permitted to discuss bilateral issues as such. So that makes it a little lame from the start only. So I think this is basically what I believe, is retarding the progress of SAARC. I hope I've answered your query, sir. Thank you.
Well, thank you, General Rana. I think that is a very, very objective and precise analysis.
Welcome, Ambassador Gannett Zivit from Addis Ababa.
My question is, how should the role of women be incorporated in the global cooperation, as women are the most vulnerable group in any society as it is today? That's my question in short.
And UN has the Human Rights Commission, and there are gender protection mechanisms there, and those gender mechanism things have to be sort of those have to be implemented in letter and spirit.
Professor Gupta was based for many years in Switzerland as Executive Director, Organizational Development for Wolfsburg, a wholly owned subsidiary of UBS. He's now a publisher for Pippa Rand Books and a consultant to company boards, helping them with thinking through and implementing the best way to use the potential of new technologies. He is speaking from where he settled now in Cambridge, UK.
Yes, Ambassador Ghanshyam, thank you very much for your really brilliant way of putting forward the challenges that are facing us as a world society. Can you hear me okay? Can you hear me okay, Ambassador Ghanshyam?
There's a lot of static. I mean, I think there's a problem with the internet.
Yeah, could be.
I can hear you, but I cannot understand you.
Maybe our
now it's better.
Okay, now it's better. Very good. So, Ambassador Ghanshyam, thank you very much for the brilliant way in which you put forward the challenges facing our globe. I was just thinking that in the days immediately after independence, we were able to put forward a sort of global vision for a non-aligned world, or at least a non-aligned movement. And now, at this critical juncture in world history, what is actually stopping us from putting forward a practical vision as a country, as India? Why can't we put forward a practical vision for a humane new world order? What is actually stopping us from doing so?
Now, why don't we come up with new ideas? I suppose it is a demand of the situation. There was a time when newly independent countries had to get together and find a way to engage with the world. Now there is another situation, another challenge. How we find the solutions to it, I mean, I'm no longer a part of the government, but I think there is enough creativity in our system, in our country, to come up with new ideas. Now, whether the shape of those new ideas would be concrete or they would develop as the situation emerges, it's again, I think it would be really gazing into the crystal ball. One has to see how the situation is panning out, and therefore I cannot but again and again emphasize the need for being watchful, for being alert, and for being very nimble and pragmatic.
So
unless you have, I think given your vast experience, you may have something to comment on that as well.
Just conclude this and thank Mr. Moses and his team and USI team and all the panelists for making a wonderful contribution. We look forward to more such interactions, sans the glitches, technical glitches that we encountered today. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.